We are anonymous. No faces, no flags, no permission slips. We show up when power stops pretending and starts improvising. When the mask slips. When the cameras catch what the press releases try to hide. And right now, Donald Trump just gave the world a live demonstration of what collapse looks like in real time. Trump loses it in a disaster briefing with the GOP over the invasion of Venezuela. It happened at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., not a battlefield, not a situation room. A cultural landmark turned into a political stage. And the images from that briefing say more than any spin ever could. These weren't AI. These were real photos of a president who looked agitated, scattered, and desperate to control a story that has already slipped out of his hands. And what did Trump choose to explain to Republicans in Congress as the reason for invading another country? Not a coherent strategy, not a legal justification, not an objective. He looked at them and said the thing about Nicolas Maduro is that he tried to imitate Trump's dance a little bit, and Trump didn't like the way Maduro was dancing. Yes, dancing. Multiple outlets had already reported Trump fixated on Maduro's public dancing and took it personally, like Maduro was trying to outshine him. And Trump's own remarks effectively confirmed that obsession in public. This is what the United States is being represented by right now. A commander-in-chief framing an invasion like it's a petty ego feud over choreography. And then Trump tries to backfill it with menace. He calls Maduro a violent guy. He claims Maduro has killed millions of people. He throws out a dark allegation about torture chambers in Caracas without offering details. This isn't leadership. This is a man tossing accusations like smoke grenades because he knows the room can't ask follow-up questions fast enough. Then the briefing pivots. Not to democracy, not to Venezuelans, not to stability, not to preventing bloodshed, to oil. Trump tells Republicans he's meeting with all the companies. He name-drops 14 companies, and then he makes the agenda crystal clear. Drill, baby, drill in Venezuela. He boasts about bringing down oil prices, and talks like Venezuelan oil is now his personal lever to pull. And buried inside that brag is the part that should make every taxpayer's stomach turn. Trump's own framing implies the American public may subsidize it. The number being floated, up to $100 billion of taxpayer money to support oil companies going into Venezuela because, in reality, those companies don't want to risk their own capital there. Too risky, too unstable, too volatile. So Trump's solution is the oldest scam in modern politics. Public money, private profit. This is the pattern. Call it strength. Sell it as national interest. Then invoice the public. And while he's selling this invasion like a drill plan, he drifts into the other obsession he can't quit. Cognitive tests. Trump tells the room he's the only president to take one, the only one to pass, the only one brave enough, the only one smart enough. He keeps saying every president and vice president should be forced to take cognitive exams. Here's the problem, Donald. You don't reassure people about your mental sharpness by repeatedly begging for applause about a screening test while your speech is unraveling in real time. Then comes the moment that exposes how disconnected he is from reality. Trump turns to Republicans and asks, essentially, why don't the American people like what we're doing? He says they have the right policy, and he wants someone to explain what's going on in the public's mind. What policies, Donald? A chaotic invasion, a resource grab, a taxpayer subsidy for oil giants, a presidency that treats elections like a punchline, a government that talks like an empire and acts surprised when the public recoils. And while he's asking why people don't like it, he calls Democrats violent and vicious, like that's supposed to be the answer. Then he admits something else. He's more furious at his own staff than at the New York Times for reports about his deteriorating health and slowing down. He complains that his people put out a schedule that only mentioned lunch, and then the press used it to say he was slowing down. He calls it malfeasance. He says he was more angry with his own team than with the paper. And then he pivots into the familiar refuge fake press. This is Trump's governing style in one ugly loop. Blame the staff, attack the press, insult the public, and never answer the core question. And the core question after an invasion is simple. What happens next? Because while Trump is ranting in Washington, Venezuela is not a TV set. It's a country. It's people. It's fear. It's power vacuums. It's armed factions. It's instability. Reuters reported Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, pleaded not guilty in Manhattan federal court, with Maduro calling it a kidnapping and insisting he's still president. And hours later, Maduro's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, was sworn in as interim president in Caracas. In other words, Trump didn't solve Venezuela. He detonated it, and the machinery of power kept moving. So when Trump stands in front of Republicans and claims everybody in Venezuela is marching in the streets, and they love it, Understand what that really is: propaganda. A fantasy designed to make Americans feel like occupation is applause. The reporting coming out describes fear and confusion, with power consolidating around new authoritarian actors and Venezuela's opposition leaders sidelined. And in the middle of this briefing, Trump also starts attacking reporters like he's swatting flies. He mocks how they look. He claims they're paid. He claims the press is so anti it's hard to believe. Then he brags about how many bad stories he got on networks, 97% here, 93% there, and says that proves the press has no credibility. He even says basically we have to keep it that way. That's not a joke. That's not a quirk. That's an admission of intent. Discredit information so only your version of reality survives. Then he shifts to something else that should chill you. He says he loves seeing the soldiers standing in D.C. He says they look beautiful. He says he wouldn't feel safe walking down the street without them. He implies America needs troops in the streets to feel safe while insisting crime is down because they took out so many criminals. This is what authoritarians do. They fetishize force. They normalize it. They wrap it in safety language and dare you to call it what it is. And then Trump starts doing math like a man arguing with reality. He claims drug prices are down 1,000%. He says you can calculate it 2 ways, and the more accurate way is something like 900%. That's not how percentages work, and it's not how governance works either. Then he randomly points at Senator Tim Scott and says, straight guy, right? Because even in a briefing about an invasion, Trump can't resist turning human beings into labels for his own amusement. Then he calls himself the king. He says he sold more Boeing planes than any human being on Earth. He says he got Salesman of the Year. He claims probably over 1,000 planes. And then he tells a story about tariffs like it's a fairy tale. He says check the tariff shelf. Claims the tariffs started earlier than people thought, and then says they came back and told him he was right, and they found plus 39 billion. This is not a briefing. This is a ramble, a scattershot performance where the president treats Congress like an audience and treats war like a backdrop. And then because he can't help himself, Trump floats the most dangerous line of all. He frames it as a joke. He says maybe they should just cancel the elections. Then he catches himself and says he won't say that because the fake news would call him a dictator. Time reported on these remarks, noting the alarm they triggered, especially given the context of January 6th and Trump's history of attacking electoral legitimacy. Trial balloon. Walk back. Smirk. Repeat later. Then he veers into nobody is worse than Obama. Because even when he's supposedly justifying an invasion, Trump still needs an enemy from the past to feed his grievance machine. And yes, he circles right back to the dancing. He calls himself a good dancer. He says people like to see him dance. He says his wife tells him he shouldn't dance because it's unpresidential. He says she asked, could you imagine FDR dancing a bizarre comparison that collapses the moment you remember FDR's reality, not Trump's punchline? He even drifts into a weird story about weightlifting, about wanting to be more effusive, about someone watching, about a girl getting up, dropping something, walking off the stage crying, and parents crying while the room laughs. In a normal world, this is where someone would take the microphone away. But this is Trump's world. The chaos is the point. There was also an inserted ad read in the original broadcast. I'm not repeating the promotional copy for a THC product, but the fact it's jammed into the middle of a war briefing recap tells you everything about the media ecosystem Trump thrives in, reality sliced into monetized fragments, while the consequences pile up off-screen. Then we get the part where even the invasion is treated like a branding exercise. The Kennedy Center is described as rebranded in Trump's orbit, and coverage of his remarks notes the Trump-Kennedy Center framing during this moment. And the bigger picture keeps screaming through the cracks. Maduro is in U.S. custody. Delcy Rodriguez is in power. Venezuelans are uncertain. Allies are rattled. The legal and moral questions are multiplying. Finally, the oil obsession surfaces again through a different channel. Joe Scarborough recounted a call with Trump and described pressing him with the Iraq comparison, what happens when America runs everything after an invasion. Scarborough said Trump's answer was blunt. The difference between Iraq and this is that Bush didn't keep the oil. We're going to keep the oil. And Scarborough said Trump doubled down, invoking his old 2016 line about keeping oil. That is the invasion doctrine, not democracy, not liberation, not security, oil. So here's the truth, in plain language. Donald Trump didn't deliver a strategy at that GOP briefing. He delivered a meltdown, a humiliating, rambling performance where he reduced an invasion to a dance grievance, pitched Venezuela like a drilling project, hinted at canceling elections, attacked the press, glorified troops in the streets, invented math, and bragged about being king of Boeing, all while a real country is left in the shockwave of his ego. And if that doesn't terrify you, it should. Because this is what happens when power stops fearing consequences. When a president treats war as content, and Congress as a fan club, and facts as optional. Share this video. Comment what you think this invasion is really about.